Have you ever seen someone step into a federal courtroom with a mop in hand and silence the room without saying a single word? It happened on a rainy Tuesday in Manhattan. The kind of rain that slicks the streets and stains the skyline with gray regret. Inside the federal courthouse, where everything smelled like mahogany, old ambition, and polished leather, the trial of the century was about to begin. At the center of it all, Celia Ward, the elusive founder and CEO of Novatech Dynamics, a tech empire she'd built from nothing but late nights, missed birthdays, and raw brilliance. She was once the poster woman for modern innovation, on the cover of every business magazine, speaking at every global summit, until it all came crashing down. Fraud, falsified contracts, federal charges. They said she doctored a deal to bury conflict of interest. She denied it. Her legal team was supposed to defend her, but they didn't show. Not a single one. And in that vacuum of silence, a man stood up. Not from the legal bench, not from her executive team, but from the back of the room where the staff and support crews waited quietly for the circus to pass. He wore no badge, no briefcase, just gray coveralls, rubber gloves, and a tired look in his eyes. His name? Malcolm Knox. Single father, widower, janitor at Novatech for the last 3 years. He held up a hand. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "I will defend her." The judge blinked. Gasps echoed through the chamber like thunder. One man near the prosecution whispered, "Who the hell is that?" Another laughed. "Got lost on the way to the janitor's closet." The judge, a steely man with silver hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense, adjusted his glasses and asked, "Mr. Knox, Malcolm Knox, you are not her attorney of record." "No, sir," Malcolm replied evenly, "but I studied law at Columbia. Dropped out to raise my daughter. I follow this case. I know what they're trying to do to her." Then he did something no one expected. He placed a thick folder on the defense table, its edges worn, pages marked with color-coded tabs. He removed his gloves slowly, as if preparing for war. "Now let me pause here and say something personal. Because this part, it doesn't happen in real life. Not in the world I've known. People like Malcolm Knox are invisible. They clean the floors after your TED Talk, sweep the halls you power walk through on your way to billion-dollar pitches. They don't stand up in courtrooms. They're not allowed to. But he did." The judge hesitated, then said, "Miss Ward, do you object to this man speaking on your behalf for this hearing only, under emergency provision 47B? Celia turned, and for the first time in her life, her mask cracked. "You," she whispered almost to herself. "You're the janitor." "Yes, ma'am," Malcolm said, "but I also know the truth." Her gaze sharpened. "Fine," she said. "Let him speak." And in that moment, something shifted in the air. Malcolm walked to the center of the room and opened the folder. "This contract," he began, tapping a printout, "was allegedly revised in Celia Ward's office, but the IP address attached to the metadata belongs to Zurich, not Manhattan. And this," he flipped the page, "this legal language, it's European formatting. Celia's team only uses US-style clause structures." Marshall Crane, the prosecution's lead attorney, scoffed. "Your Honor, this is absurd. He's not qualified to make these assertions." "It's not theory," Malcolm replied calmly. "It's data. And this," he pulled out another document, "is the original filing with the Securities Commission, unedited, time-stamped 2 weeks before the alleged breach." Gasps again. Some murmured. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Knox, are you saying the documents were forged?" "I'm saying someone set her up, and they counted on the fact that no one would notice. But I did, because I clean those offices every night. I know who prints what time the lights go off. I know because no one watches me, and so I see everything. That line, it hit me hard, because that's what it's like when you're seen as invisible. You hear things, you witness the truth, but you're never given a voice, until now." The judge cleared his throat. "We'll take a recess and review this material." As the court adjourned, no one moved. Celia remained seated, staring at Malcolm. He turned to leave. "Mr. Knox," she said. He stopped. "You embarrassed me," she said softly. "I know. Don't do it again." He paused. "Then give me something worth defending." That line, it wasn't just bravado, it was a challenge, because Celia Ward wasn't used to being saved. Not by men like him, not by anyone. That night, Malcolm sat at his kitchen table in Queens. His daughter, Harper, curled up beside him, drawing pictures of him holding a mop like a sword. "You're like Batman, but with paper," she said. He laughed, but deep down, he felt something shift. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to tell the truth before someone shredded it. And somewhere, in a cold boardroom across town, a man named Elliot Soren, head of Alter Holdings, poured himself a drink and stared at a blank screen. "Who the hell is Malcolm Knox?" he muttered. "Someone who sees everything. Someone no one expected." The next morning, the courthouse lobby buzzed like a shaken beehive. Reporters swarmed outside. Financial analysts whispered into phones. Cameras clicked as if truth could be captured in a still frame. The scandal of the decade had just taken a left turn, and the janitor was driving. Inside, Malcolm Knox stood at the metal detector, wearing a clean navy button-up, sleeves rolled, his old boots polished with a toothbrush the night before. The same folder was tucked under his arm like armor. The security guard gave him a strange look. "You again?" Malcolm nodded. Still not lost. He passed through the checkpoint and walked toward courtroom 7B, the hallway unusually quiet. But his mind wasn't. It raced with every theory, every document, every late-night moment scrubbing floors while wondering how a tech titan like Celia Ward ended up one signature away from ruin. She was already seated inside when he arrived. Today she looked different, less polished, more real. Her signature chignon was replaced with a tight ponytail, and she wore a dark blue suit that looked like armor tailored for war. Their eyes met, and this time, she didn't look away. "Morning," Malcolm said quietly, setting his folder on the defense table. "You're early," she replied. "I couldn't sleep." Celia looked down, then back up. "Neither could I." Let me pause here to say, this is the moment I knew something had changed. You could see it in her posture. Celia Ward wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was preparing to fight with someone. The judge entered. Gavels echoed. The trial resumed. Marshal Crane was already mid-stride toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "let us not mistake theatrics for truth. Yesterday, a man, who is not a licensed attorney, suggested my client was framed. Today, we prove otherwise. He launched into a speech about credibility, chain of custody, and how janitors don't get to rewrite corporate law. And honestly, he was good, smooth, confident, a shark in silk. But when Malcolm stood, everything shifted. "Your Honor," he said, placing a new document on the desk. "This is a copy of StormTech's overseas server log recovered from last month's Zurich data dump. The IP address attached to the disputed amendment, it was used by someone logged in with a credential only issued to one person." He turned to the jury. "A man named Paul Teller." Celia's head snapped toward him. Crane stood abruptly. "Objection. He has no authority to investigate." "I didn't," Malcolm interrupted. "I just noticed what your investigators ignored." The judge raised a brow. "Explain." Malcolm flipped the page. "Mr. Teller was Celia Ward's assistant for 3 years. He handled international travel, expense reports, document approvals. He was granted access to her credentials for overseas routing. 2 weeks before the forged amendment appeared, he resigned. No notice, no exit interview, just vanished." The room buzzed. "I also have a record of a storage locker," Malcolm continued, "rented under Teller's name. It was opened yesterday. Inside was a sealed memo from Alter Holdings, signed by legal counsel, outlining their strategy to dismantle StormTech piece by piece." He placed a copy on the desk. The judge skimmed it, eyes widening slightly. "Where did you obtain this?" "Chain of custody is intact, verified, filed with your clerk this morning." The prosecution scrambled. Crane leaned into his mic. "Your Honor, if this document is real—" "It is," Malcolm said calmly. "Then why was it left in a locker?" "Because someone wanted to bury it quietly. But the shredder jammed," he said, turning slightly toward Celia. "And sometimes all it takes is one overlooked janitor to find what everyone else misses. I know what you're thinking. This is fiction. This doesn't happen. But let me tell you, truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through jammed shredders and forgotten floor bins. Sometimes justice wears gloves and smells like lemon polish. The judge nodded slowly. Court will recess for 1 hour while we authenticate these materials. The gavels fell. Celia didn't move. When the room emptied, she turned to Malcolm. You had no right to go looking. Maybe not, he said, but I saw someone trying to burn you alive. And I still had a bucket of water. That was the first time I saw Celia Ward falter, not because of weakness, but because she realized she didn't have to stand alone anymore. They sat in the empty courtroom for a moment longer, silence wrapping around them like soft armor. I should have known it was Paul, she murmured. He always asked too many questions about Zurich protocols. I thought he was just curious. You trusted him. She nodded. That's what they're counting on. That trust makes you vulnerable. Malcolm shrugged. Maybe, but lack of it makes you hollow. She looked at him then, really looked. What do you want out of this, Malcolm? He hesitated. Honestly, I just want my daughter to grow up believing that people can still stand up for the truth, even when it costs them everything. Her eyes softened. You're a strange man. I get that a lot. Do you want to see his old office? He blinked. You're serious? I'm the CEO, she said, even on trial. They walked down to the second floor. Celia swiped her key card and led him into Paul Teller's office. It was pristine, too pristine, like no one had ever lived in it, except the dust on the bookshelf said otherwise. Malcolm knelt, scanning the spines. Something was off. He pulled a book, hollowed inside like a spy movie cliché, and found a slip of paper, a number. Locker 4217. Think that's Zurich? He asked. Celia didn't answer, but her face said everything. Back at his apartment that night, Malcolm sat at the kitchen table with Harper drawing beside him. The locker number stared at him from the notepad. His fingers tapped the table like a ticking clock. You thinking loud again? Harper said. He smiled faintly. Yeah. Sorry, kiddo. She looked up at him. Is Miss Ward going to be okay? He thought for a long moment, then said, if we find what's in that locker, she might be. And then, as if the universe were listening, his phone buzzed. A message from Celia. Flight to Zurich leaves 6 a.m. If you're in, meet me at gate 27. Don't be late. Malcolm stared at the screen. This wasn't just about court anymore. This was war, and it was time to clean house. The Zurich airport was a cold mosaic of steel, glass, and muted voices. Everything moved with mechanical precision, trains gliding silently beneath the concourse. Business people in charcoal suits walking briskly with unreadable eyes. But Malcolm Knox wasn't here for business. He was here for the truth. At gate 27, he found Celia Ward leaning against a column, coat draped over one arm, black turtleneck hugging her frame like quiet confidence. No makeup, no entourage, just her. You made it, she said, offering him a coffee. I said I would. They boarded without fanfare, sat near the back, separated from the few other passengers by an invisible wall of exhaustion and anticipation. Mid-flight, Malcolm pulled out the slip of paper again. 4217. What do you think is in the locker? Celia asked. Evidence, he replied. Or a trap. Maybe both. She nodded, eyes drifting to the clouds beyond the window. When I was young, she said suddenly, I used to believe justice always showed up, that someone would step in when things got bad, and now? Now I think justice needs a map, and a pair of boots willing to walk through fire. Malcolm said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence between them had become comfortable, like old wood creaking under familiar weight. They landed, took a taxi straight to Hooray Logistics, a drab industrial building tucked between two glass towers. It looked like a storage facility that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the Clinton administration. Inside, the receptionist, blonde, bored, and chewing gum like it was personal, eyed them both. Locker number, she asked. Malcolm slid the paper across the desk. 4217. You got ID? He handed over his license. She squinted. You're not Paul Teller. No, he replied, but we're collecting on behalf of the company. Emergency authorization. She tapped a few keys. Locker's still active. Last accessed 9 weeks ago. No retrieval since she handed them a key. Row 4. Left side. They moved down the cold, echoing corridor. Metal lockers lined both sides like vaults of forgotten sins. Malcolm stopped at 4217, inserted the key, and turned. Click. Inside was a single steel case, heavy, sealed, with a USB drive taped to the top and a manila envelope labeled Novatech Phase 2, Contingency Materials. He didn't speak, just handed it to Celia. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were emails, dozens, from Paul Teller, from Elliot Soren, from a shadowy network of consultants using aliases that sounded like boardroom ghosts. But what made her go pale, what made Malcolm lean closer, was the spreadsheet. Stormfall_projection.xlsx. It was a roadmap. Line by line, it detailed how Alter Holdings planned to collapse Novatech from within, inflate risk, undermine leadership trust, fabricate inconsistencies in SEC reports, push for forced acquisition once stock dipped below $38, install Soren as interim chair, projected profit $2.3 billion. But the last tab, that's what made my breath catch. Media strategy, character takedown. Under Celia's name were listed buzzwords: difficult to work with, the emotionally unstable, unfit for leadership, leverage past trauma for PR spin, and under it all, leak photos, twist narrative, isolate Celia, drop the folder like it was on fire. This wasn't just corporate warfare, she whispered. It was personal. Malcolm leaned against the locker, pulse thudding in his ears. They didn't just want to destroy your company. They wanted to erase you. She nodded, eyes wet but blazing. You okay? He asked softly. No, she said, but I'm not scared anymore. That night in a tiny Zurich cafe lit by candles and the smell of roasted garlic, they sat together without speaking for nearly 10 minutes. Then she asked him the one question he didn't expect. Why did you keep going? He stirred his tea. Because silence is a choice, and I've been quiet too long. She looked at him like she was seeing something behind his eyes she hadn't noticed before. When your wife passed, did you ever think about walking away? Every day, he said, but I had a daughter who needed stories, and I couldn't let her grow up thinking the world was a place where no one fought for you. That's what this is to you, she asked. A story? He smiled faintly. No, this is a chapter. The story's still being written. They returned to New York the next morning. The city welcomed them with honks, headlines, and the promise of a storm. Inside Novatech's private elevator, they stood shoulder to shoulder. Celia said nothing until the doors opened. Then she turned and looked him square in the face. Thank you. For what? For not just standing beside me, but for walking into the fire first. Malcolm didn't reply, because there are moments when words fall short, when the only answer is presence. That afternoon, they met with the defense team, submitted the Zurich materials, swore chain of custody. The courtroom ignited again. Marshal Crane turned ashen. And the judge? He didn't just review the new evidence. He called for a federal inquiry into Alter Holdings. Celia's shoulders dropped, not in defeat, but in the first breath of freedom she'd taken in weeks. Outside the courthouse, as cameras flashed, a young reporter shoved a mic into Malcolm's face. Mr. Knox, do you consider yourself a hero? He looked over at Harper, standing beside Celia and waving proudly. Then he looked back. No, he said, just a janitor who refused to clean up a lie. And somehow that line made the front page. But for Malcolm, the real victory came later, at the kitchen table, with Harper asleep upstairs, with Celia texting him a single line. Let's finish what we started. And he replied, I'll bring the mop. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge's voice sliced through the tense courtroom like a blade. Everything went silent. Cameras stopped clicking. Breath paused in lungs. Somewhere in the back row, a reporter's pen froze mid-sentence. Celia Ward sat still, chin up, back straight, but her hands clasped on her lap, trembled ever so slightly. Next to her sat her defense attorney, and behind them, in the second row, Malcolm Knox. A man with no law license, no business suit, no accolades, just a calloused heart, a worn folder, and the belief that the truth deserved someone willing to hold the line. The foreperson stood. "We have, Your Honor." She passed the slip of paper to the bailiff. The entire room leaned forward, not visibly, but spiritually, because what was about to happen would echo across headlines, boardrooms, and possibly hearts. The judge read the note silently. Then he looked up. In the matter of the people versus Celia Ward, on all charges including securities fraud, contract falsification, and conspiracy to deceive federal regulators, his eyes scanned the room once more. We find the defendant not guilty. And just like that, a collective breath released, but not in noise. No cheers, no clapping, just silence, deep and reverent, the sound of the truth finally heard. Celia closed her eyes. She didn't break down. She didn't even smile, but her shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. Malcolm, he just nodded. The way you do when something ends, not with fireworks, but with quiet vindication. Let me tell you something personal here. I've seen courtroom victories before, but this one, it wasn't about money or glory or saving face. It was about the unseen, the underestimated, the janitor who refused to walk away, the woman who survived being erased, and most importantly, the little girl watching from the gallery who now believed that standing up mattered. Later, outside the courthouse, microphones gathered like hungry birds, but Celia didn't speak. She walked down the steps straight toward Malcolm. No cameras, no flashbulbs, just her and him. You stood up when no one else would, she said. You held the line. He looked at her. You didn't ask for help. I didn't know I was allowed to. That line, it cracked something open between them. Are you? He asked softly. She nodded. Now I do. They walked to the waiting car. Harper was already inside, seatbelt on, smile wide. Did we win? She asked as the door closed. Celia looked at her. We did. And now what? Harper whispered. Celia glanced at Malcolm. He answered, now we build something better. 2 weeks later, the Novatech headquarters glowed in soft evening light. The usual tension was gone, replaced with laughter, footsteps without dread, and conversations that didn't end in whispers. In the main lobby, a new plaque had been installed beneath the company's name, a company where everyone matters, and beneath that, dedicated to the unseen who stood up. Celia entered the conference room wearing jeans, a white tee, and a blazer, not for power, but for balance. The board had resigned, the company had been restructured, and she was no longer the woman who ran alone. Malcolm entered, sleeves rolled, collar undone, a fresh notebook in his hand. You're late, she said with a smile. Had to mop the 17th floor, he replied. Messy executives. They sat, no titles, just two people trying to figure out what comes after war. I spoke with the Department of Justice, she said. Alter Holdings is being investigated. Paul Teller's been located in Bermuda. He'll be extradited. Good, Malcolm said. But that's not what worries me. No? I worry about the cracks we didn't see. She paused. Then let's make a company that listens more. He raised a brow. Even to janitors? She grinned. Especially to janitors. They fell quiet, watching the lights outside blink on like stars returning after a storm. Then Celia turned to him. I still don't know what this is, she said. You and me. Neither do I. But I know I want to keep finding out. Malcolm looked at her, really looked. I'm not a quick man, he said. I move slow. I pay attention. She nodded. That's exactly what I need. 3 months later. The Novatech family open house filled the building with warmth. Children ran through science labs. Parents met engineers. The walls echoed with curiosity, not fear. Harper wore a junior STEM captain badge and led a group of kids in a circuit building workshop. Celia walked through the hall with 2 cups of coffee, one of them black with just a hint of cinnamon. She found Malcolm adjusting a display on Newton's laws. For the man who refuses to label wires until they're aligned perfectly, she said, handing him the cup. He chuckled. I live in organized chaos. She nodded toward Harper. She talks about you like you're some kind of superhero. I just show up. That's more than most. They stood quietly as the children laughed around them. Remember what you told me that first night? Celia asked. Which part? That justice doesn't wear a suit. He smiled. It wears work boots. She took his hand. No cameras, no press, just presence. Then she whispered, You didn't save me. He turned to her. Didn't try to. You stood beside me long enough for me to save myself. That moment, that's where love begins. Not in declarations, not in kisses, but in the quiet choice to stay when others leave. That night back in Malcolm's apartment, Harper fell asleep on the couch, curled up with her STEM kit blinking beside her like a constellation. Celia sat at the kitchen table wearing one of Malcolm's old hoodies. Her hair was tied back. No makeup. Just her. He brewed tea, chamomile. She asked me tonight if you were her hero, Celia said. Malcolm stirred sugar into her cup. What did you say? I told her the truth. What's that? That heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they carry mop buckets and broken hearts. He sat beside her, quiet, still, safe. Then she reached for his hand. I don't want to be untouchable anymore. You never were, he replied. You were just afraid to be touched by the wrong people. She leaned her head against his shoulder. No fireworks, just peace. And in a world that so often confuses power with isolation, these two souls, one who built empires and one who cleaned up after them, finally found something worth building together. Not for a company, not for image, but for themselves. On the glass panel in the Novatech lobby, a new signature appeared, one written in sharp black ink, bold and careful. Beneath it, Malcolm had written, Because love is not what you say, it's what you do. And for once, everyone saw it, really saw it, and never looked away again.